Maya Chen wiped down the counter for the 100th time that night. The old diner was quiet except for the soft buzz of fluorescent lights and the steady hum of the coffee machine. She liked it this way. Quiet meant safe. Quiet meant invisible. The clock on the wall showed 2:30 a.m. Only 3 customers sat in the worn vinyl booths. An old truck driver named Bill nursed his 4th cup of coffee while reading yesterday's newspaper. A young woman with tired eyes stared at her phone, picking at a piece of pie she hadn't really wanted. Near the window, a man in a wrinkled suit dozed over his scrambled eggs. Maya had been working this shift for 8 months now. Before that, she had worked at a gas station in Nevada for 6 months. Before that, a small grocery store in Utah for 4 months. She never stayed anywhere too long. Moving was safer. She poured herself a cup of coffee and added 3 spoonfuls of sugar. The spoon clinked against the ceramic mug, a small sound in the endless quiet of the night. Maya had learned to love these small sounds. They were normal. They were human. They reminded her that she was just another person working a late shift to pay the bills. But sometimes when she wasn't paying attention, things happened that weren't normal at all. Like right now. Maya watched as the salt shaker on table 4 slowly slid 3 inches to the left. She held her breath and looked around. Bill was still reading his paper. The young woman was still staring at her phone. The man in the suit was still asleep. Nobody had seen it. Maya walked over to the table and pushed the salt shaker back to its original spot. Her hands were shaking slightly. She had been so careful for so long. 3 years of being careful. 3 years of keeping everything locked down tight. She thought about Dr. Maya Chen, the person she used to be. That woman had worn expensive suits and worked in a laboratory that most people didn't know existed. That woman had a PhD in quantum physics and security clearance so high that even her dentist had to be approved by the government. That woman could do impossible things with her mind. This Maya wore a stained apron and served coffee to strangers. This Maya lived in a tiny apartment with furniture from thrift stores. This Maya paid rent in cash and had no credit cards, no social media accounts, and no friends who knew her real name. It was better this way. Safer. The bell above the door chimed, and Maya looked up to see another late-night customer. A woman about her age with short brown hair and kind eyes walked in. She looked tired, like she had been driving for hours. "Coffee, please," the woman said, sliding onto a stool at the counter. "And maybe some of whatever smells so good back there." Maya smiled and poured the coffee. "Apple pie. Made it fresh this afternoon." "Perfect." As Maya cut a slice of pie, she felt the familiar warmth in her chest that meant her abilities were stirring. She pushed the feeling down, the way she had taught herself to do. "Think about normal things," she told herself. "Think about the recipe for the pie. Think about whether it might rain tomorrow. Think about anything except the way the coffee cup was starting to vibrate slightly on the counter." The woman didn't notice. She was busy adding cream to her coffee and checking her phone. "Long drive?" Maya asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Very long. I'm heading to California to see my sister. She just had a baby." The woman smiled. "First-time aunt. I'm pretty excited." "That's wonderful," Maya said, and meant it. She placed the pie in front of the woman and tried not to. Noticed that the fork had appeared in exactly the right spot without her consciously placing it. There. Normal people didn't make forks appear in the right place by thinking about it. Normal people didn't make salt shakers move across tables. Normal people definitely didn't accidentally destroy military facilities when they had nightmares. But Maya wasn't normal people. She never had been, even before the government found her and made her abilities stronger. Even as a child, she could move things without touching them. Her parents had thought it was cute when she made her toys dance in the air. They stopped thinking it was cute when she accidentally broke every window in their house during a tantrum when she was 7. The facility had been her home for 12 years. Dr. Patterson and his team had taught her to control her gifts, to use them for what they called the greater good. They had other people like her there. Marcus, who could walk through walls. Elena, who could throw energy like lightning bolts. James, who could read minds and always knew when someone was lying. They had been like a family. A strange, dangerous family with abilities that could change the world, until the night Maya lost control. She pushed the memory away before it could fully form. That was the past. This was her life now. Serving coffee and pie to strangers. Keeping her head down. Staying invisible. The woman finished her pie and left a generous tip, Thank you, she said warmly. That was exactly what I needed. After the woman left, Maya began cleaning the coffee machine. It was an old machine, temperamental and loud. Usually she had to fight with it to get it to work properly. But tonight, as her mind wandered, the machine began cleaning itself. The water flowed at exactly the right temperature. The grinding mechanism smoothed out its usual rough spots. Every part worked in perfect harmony. Maya realized what was happening and quickly pulled her attention back to the real world. The machine sputtered and returned to its normal, cranky behavior. She looked around again. Bill was paying his check and getting ready to leave. The young woman had fallen asleep in her booth. The man in the suit was still dozing. Nobody had noticed that the coffee machine had just performed better than it had in months. Maya took a deep breath. She was tired, and when she was tired, her control slipped. She needed to be more careful. But as she watched Bill walk out into the parking lot, she saw him stop and look back at the diner. For just a moment, his expression was different. Alert. Like he was seeing something that hadn't been there before. Maya's blood ran cold. Had he noticed something after all? Bill got into his truck and drove away, but Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. For 3 years she had been invisible. For 3 years she had been safe in her quiet life. But power like hers didn't stay buried forever, and somewhere in the back of her mind, Maya knew that her time of hiding was almost over. The diner felt different now. Less safe, less quiet, like something was coming that would change everything. Maya looked at her reflection in the dark window. For just a second, she could have sworn her eyes had a faint golden glow. She turned away quickly and went back to wiping down counters. Normal life. Normal job. Normal person. But normal was getting harder and harder to pretend. The men walked into Maya's diner at exactly 2 a.m. on a Tuesday night. Maya knew they were trouble the moment she saw them. They wore expensive black suits that looked out of place in her small desert diner. Their shoes were polished to a mirror shine. Their hair was perfectly styled despite the late hour, but it wasn't their clothes that made Maya's hands start shaking. It was their eyes. They glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside their heads. Maya had seen that blue glow before, in her worst nightmares. She had hoped she would never see it again in real life. The two men sat down at the counter without saying a word. The taller one had pale skin and sharp features. The shorter one looked more normal except for those terrible glowing eyes. They both stared at Maya with expressions that never changed. "What can I get you, gentlemen?" Maya asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Her heart was beating so fast she was sure they could hear it. "Coffee," the tall one said. His voice sounded wrong, like it was coming from the bottom of a well. "Black." Maya poured 2 cups with hands that trembled slightly. The coffee splashed a little on the counter. She quickly wiped it up, but not before she noticed that the spilled coffee had started to boil without any heat. The shorter man smiled, showing teeth that were too white and too sharp. "Nervous tonight, Maya-chan." Maya's blood turned to ice. They knew her real name. After 3 years of being careful, of using fake names and paying cash for everything, somehow they had found her. "I think you have me confused with someone else," Maya said. "My name is Sarah. Sarah Williams." The tall man laughed, but it didn't sound like human laughter. It sounded like wind blowing through empty spaces. "We know exactly who you are. We know what you can do. We know why you're hiding." Maya looked around the diner desperately. There were 5 other customers tonight. Bill the truck driver was back reading a magazine. 2 teenagers shared a plate of fries in a corner booth. An elderly woman worked on a crossword puzzle. A middle-aged man in work clothes sat alone, drinking coffee and looking tired after a long shift. All of them had stopped what they were doing. All of them were staring at Maya with the same blue, glowing eyes. Maya's coffee cup slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor. The sound echoed through the suddenly silent diner like a gunshot. "What do you want?" Maya whispered. The tall man leaned forward. When he moved, Maya could see the air around him shimmer like heat waves rising from hot pavement. "We want what you are trying so hard to hide. We want the power that flows through your blood like liquid lightning. I don't know what you're talking about." But even as Maya said the words, the lights in the diner began to flicker. The coffee machine started making grinding noises. The jukebox in the corner turned on by itself and began playing a song with no words, just strange electronic sounds. "Your kind is dangerous," the shorter man said. You bend reality without thinking about the consequences. You tear holes in the fabric of space and time just by existing. We are here to fix that problem. Maya backed toward the kitchen, but everywhere she looked, she saw those glowing blue eyes watching her. The possessed customers had stood up from their tables and were moving closer. They walked in perfect unison like puppets controlled by the same strings. "Who are you?" Maya asked, though part of her already knew the answer from her nightmares. "We are the Erasers," the tall man said. "We clean up messes that threaten the balance between worlds. We remove things that don't belong." The elderly woman who had been doing crosswords spoke in the same hollow voice as the men in suits. "Your species discovered abilities it was never meant to have. 12 of you remain on this planet. 12 sources of chaos that must be contained." Maya felt sick. 12. There are others like me. "Not for much longer," said the teenager with the glowing eyes. "We have been hunting your kind across dimensions for a very long time. You thought you could hide by burying your power, but every time you suppress it, it grows stronger. Every time you try to be normal, you become more of a beacon calling to us across the void." The truth hit Maya like a physical blow. Her 3 years of hiding hadn't protected anyone. She had been leading these creatures straight to other people with abilities like hers. Every coffee shop where she had worked, every small town where she had tried to disappear, she had been putting innocent people in danger. "The others," Maya said desperately. "Where are they?" The tall eraser smiled his terrible smile. "Closer than you think. One works at a bookstore in Oregon. Another teaches children in a small school in Kansas. A third fixes cars in a garage in Texas. They all think they are safe. They all think they are hidden. But we know exactly where each one is thanks to the trail of quantum disturbance you leave wherever you go." Maya could feel her power stirring in response to her fear and anger. The temperature in the diner began to rise. Frost started forming on the windows even though it was a warm night. The cash register drawer slammed open and shut repeatedly. "Stop fighting it," the shorter eraser said. "Show us your true strength. It will make the extraction process so much easier." "Extraction," Maya repeated. "We drain the power from your kind and use it to fuel our journey between dimensions," the tall one explained casually. "The process usually kills the host, but sometimes they survive as empty shells. We met one of your former colleagues 3 days ago. Dr. James Wright. He lasted almost an hour before his mind completely shattered." Maya screamed. James had been her friend, her colleague, one of the few people who had understood what it was like to have abilities that marked you as different. The thought of him being tortured and drained by these monsters filled her with rage that made her careful control finally snap. Every piece of furniture in the diner lifted into the air. The jukebox exploded in a shower of sparks. The windows cracked in perfect spiderweb patterns. The possessed customers staggered as waves of psychic energy washed over them. But the erasers just stood there, completely calm, watching Maya's power with hungry interest. "Magnificent," the tall one said. "You will provide enough energy to power our ship for decades." Maya knew she had to run. She had to get away from these creatures and warn the others. But as she turned toward the back exit, she realized with growing horror that running would only make things worse. These things had found her by following the trail of her suppressed power. If she used her abilities to escape, she would be leading them straight to every other gifted person on Earth. The erasers had set the perfect trap. Fight back and doom the others. Stay and die alone. Maya looked around at the possessed customers, at the destroyed diner, at the creatures who had turned her quiet life into a nightmare. For 3 years, she had tried to disappear. Now it was time to decide if she was brave enough to reappear. Maya made her choice. She couldn't let these creatures drain her power and use it to hunt down the other 11 people like her. Even if fighting back put everyone in danger, doing nothing would guarantee their deaths. She stopped trying to control her abilities and let them explode outward like a dam bursting. Golden light erupted from Maya's body, washing over the diner in waves of pure energy. Every piece of furniture that had been floating in the air began spinning in perfect circles around her. The broken jukebox sparked back to life, playing a melody that sounded like angels singing. The cracked windows healed themselves, then shattered again, then healed again in an endless cycle. The possessed customers screamed and collapsed to the floor as the blue light was ripped from their eyes. Bill the truck driver blinked in confusion and looked around like he was waking up from a bad dream. The teenagers hugged each other, crying and asking what had happened. The elderly woman stared at her crossword puzzle like she couldn't remember how she had gotten there, but the erasers just stood in the center of the chaos, completely untouched by Maya's power. They watched her with expressions of hungry delight. "Yes," the tall one said, his voice cutting through the storm of psychic energy. "This is exactly what we hoped for. Do you feel that, brother? Can you taste the pure quantum force flowing through her?" The shorter eraser licked his lips with a tongue that was too long and too black. "She is even stronger than the report suggested. The government facility that trained her never saw her true potential." Maya felt a chill of fear cut through her rage. "How do you know about the facility?" "We know everything about your kind," the tall eraser said. "We know about the experiments. We know about the 12 subjects who gained abilities far beyond normal human limits. We know about the night you lost control and turned the entire complex into a crater filled with melted steel and glass." The memory hit Maya like a physical blow. She had been asleep in her room at the facility when the nightmare began. In her dream, she was back home as a child, watching her parents die in a car accident that had never actually happened. The grief and terror in the dream felt completely real, and her sleeping mind had lashed out with enough force to level a city block. When she woke up, the facility was gone. Her friends were gone. Dr. Patterson and his team were gone. She had been the only survivor, protected by an unconscious bubble of her own power while everything else was destroyed. "You blame yourself," the shorter eraser said, reading her thoughts somehow. "But you shouldn't. Your power was always going to grow beyond your control. It's the nature of your kind. You are accidents of evolution, genetic mistakes that threaten the stability of reality itself." Maya's golden energy flared brighter. "We're not mistakes. We're human beings. You are weapons that learn to think," the tall eraser corrected, "and weapons must be controlled or destroyed." Maya realized that talking was not going to help. These creatures had already decided that she and the others had to die. The only question was whether she would go down fighting or let them drain her quietly. She chose to fight. Maya gathered her power and threw it at the erasers like a golden spear. The energy hit them and passed right through without causing any damage. They laughed as her strongest attack did nothing more than ruffle their perfectly styled hair. "Physical force will not work on us," the tall one explained patiently. "We exist partially outside your dimension. Your power can touch us, but it cannot harm us." Maya tried a different approach. Instead of attacking the erasers directly, she focused on the space around them. She grabbed hold of the air molecules and compressed them into a solid wall, trying to trap the creatures in place. The erasers walked through her wall of compressed air like it wasn't there. "Matter manipulation will also fail," the shorter one said. "We are not bound by the same physical laws that limit your species." Panic began to creep into Maya's mind. If she couldn't hurt these things, how could she protect herself or anyone else? Her power felt useless against enemies who existed in multiple dimensions at the same time. But then she remembered something Dr. Patterson had told her during her training. "Power isn't just about force, Maya. It's about understanding. The strongest weapon is a mind that can see all the possibilities." Maya stopped attacking and started observing. She watched the way the erasers moved, the way they interacted with the environment around them. They might exist partially outside normal space, but they were still here in her dimension. They were still breathing her air, standing on her floor, affected by her gravity. That meant they had to have some connection to her reality, some anchor point that kept them stable in this dimension. Maya reached out with her consciousness and felt for the quantum threads that connected all things. She had done this before at the facility, mapping the invisible web of energy that held the universe together. It was one of her most advanced abilities, something that required perfect focus and control. The diner faded away as Maya's awareness expanded. She could see the fundamental structure of reality itself, like looking at a vast tapestry woven from light and time and possibility. Most of the threads were normal, following the patterns she expected, but around the erasers the threads were wrong. They twisted in impossible directions, forming knots that hurt to look at. These creatures were tears in the fabric of space-time, held in place by stolen energy from people like her. Maya reached toward one of the twisted threads and carefully began to untangle it. The tall eraser suddenly stumbled, his perfect composure cracking for the first time. "What are you doing?" he demanded, and for the first time his voice sounded worried instead of confident. "I'm seeing you for what you really are," Maya said, still working on the quantum knots. You're not predators. You're parasites. You can't exist in our dimension without stealing our energy to anchor yourselves here. She untangled another thread, and the shorter eraser flickered like a bad television signal. Stop, he commanded, but his voice was getting weaker. You don't understand what you're doing. If you sever our connection to this reality, we'll be pulled back to our home dimension. Our world is dying. We need your power to survive, Maya paused. These creatures had threatened to kill her and drain 11 other innocent people. They had tortured and possibly murdered James. But now they were begging for their lives, claiming they were refugees from a dying world. Part of her wanted to feel sorry for them. But a larger part remembered the terror in the possessed customer's eyes and the casual way the erasers had talked about murdering her friends. Find another way to survive, Maya said firmly. One that doesn't involve killing innocent people. She reached for her phone and dialed the emergency number Dr. Patterson had given her years ago, hoping it still worked. The phone rang once, twice, then a familiar voice answered. Maya, thank God you're alive. This is Elena Vasquez. James gave me your number before they took him. Listen carefully. The erasers aren't just hunting us randomly. They're working with someone from our world. Someone who knows exactly where to find us. We need to meet. We need to fight back. Maya looked at the flickering erasers, at the destroyed diner, at the confused customers who were slowly remembering what had happened to them. Where? Maya asked. Interstate 40, mile marker 267. There's an abandoned gas station. Can you be there in 2 hours? Maya glanced at the erasers again. They were becoming more transparent as she continued to untangle their quantum anchors. Soon they would be pulled back to their home dimension whether they wanted to go or not. I'll be there, Maya said. As she hung up the phone, the tall eraser made one last, desperate attempt to reach her. His hand passed right through her arm like smoke. This isn't over, he whispered as he faded away. We will find another way to reach your dimension. And when we do, you will pay for this interference. Then they were gone, leaving Maya alone with the wreckage of her quiet life and the terrible knowledge that the real fight was just beginning. Maya drove through the desert night toward the abandoned gas station, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tight her knuckles were white. Every few minutes, she checked her rearview mirror to make sure she wasn't being followed. The erasers were gone for now, but she didn't trust that they would stay away. The old gas station sat in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by empty desert and broken dreams. Half the neon sign was missing letters, and weeds grew through cracks in the concrete. Maya parked next to a dusty pickup truck and walked toward the building, her heart pounding. A woman stepped out of the shadows. She was about Maya's age, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and intelligent brown eyes that seemed to see everything at once. She wore jeans and a leather jacket that looked like it had seen better days. Maya Chen, the woman said, extending her hand. I'm Elena Vasquez. Thank you for coming. Maya shook Elena's hand and immediately felt a small electric shock. Not painful, just a gentle buzz of energy passing between them. Elena smiled apologetically. Sorry about that. I have trouble controlling my power when I'm nervous. And I'm very nervous these days. What can you do? Maya asked. Elena held up her hand, and tiny bolts of blue lightning danced between her fingers. Not the cold blue light of the erasers, but warm electric energy that made Maya think of summer storms and power lines, humming in the wind. Energy manipulation, Elena said. I can store electricity in my body and release it when needed. Useful for powering equipment or frying the electronics in cars that are chasing you. They walked into the abandoned building. Maya was surprised to see that it wasn't empty. Someone had set up a basic living space with sleeping bags, battery-powered lanterns, and a folding table covered with maps and photographs. 4 other people sat around the table, all looking up as Maya entered. Everyone, Elena said. This is Maya, the one I told you about. A young man with messy brown hair and kind eyes stood up first. Marcus Rodriguez, he said, shaking Maya's hand. I can phase through solid objects. Like this. Marcus reached toward the concrete wall and pushed his hand right through it like the wall was made of water. Maya stared as he pulled his hand back out completely unharmed. That's incredible, Maya said. It comes in handy, Marcus admitted, though I once got stuck halfway. Through a door for 3 hours because I lost my concentration. The next person to introduce herself was a woman in her 30s with long red hair and dirt under her fingernails. Sarah Kim, she said with a warm smile. I work with plants. Sarah touched a dead cactus that sat in a cracked pot near the window. Immediately, the brown skeleton of the plant began to turn green. New growth sprouted from every branch. Beautiful pink flowers bloomed along the arms of the cactus, filling the abandoned gas station with a sweet scent. I can make anything grow, Sarah explained. Flowers, trees, vegetables. I can also make plants move and fight if I need them to. Turns out roses with 6-foot stems make excellent whips. The third person was a man about Maya's age with Asian features and the most intense stare Maya had ever seen. His eyes seemed to be looking at something far away, something only he could see. David Park, he said quietly. I see possible futures. All of them all at once. It's not always as useful as you might think. David's eyes suddenly went completely white, and he spoke in a hollow voice that reminded Maya uncomfortably of the erasers. Maya Chen will choose to help us. She will learn to control her quantum manipulation abilities. In 67% of possible futures, she saves the world. In 33%, her power destroys it. His eyes returned to normal and he blinked several times. Sorry about that. The visions come whether I want them or not. The last person was a young woman who looked barely out of her teens. She had short black hair and gentle hands that she kept folded in her lap. Lin Chang, she said softly. I'm a healer. I can fix injuries, cure diseases, even bring people back from the edge of death if I get to them fast enough. Lin reached over and touched a small cut on Maya's hand that she had gotten while cleaning up the broken coffee cup at the diner. Warm golden light flowed from Lin's fingers and Maya watched in amazement as the cut healed completely, leaving no scar behind. We're all that's left, Elena said grimly. The erasers have been hunting people like us for months. There used to be 12 of us. Now there are 6. Maya felt sick. What happened to the others? James was captured 3 days ago, Elena said, her voice heavy with grief. We found him yesterday at an old warehouse outside Phoenix. The erasers had drained him completely. He was still alive, but empty. Like a computer with all the programs deleted. David's eyes went white again. James Wright sits in a white room and stares at walls. He remembers nothing. He feels nothing. He will live for many years as an empty shell. Stop, Lin said firmly, tears in her eyes. We know what happened to him. You don't need to keep showing us. David's eyes returned to normal. I'm sorry. Sometimes the visions are too strong to control. Elena continued her grim report. 2 others were killed in Seattle last month. Maria Santos, who could control the weather, and Tom Bradley, who could become invisible. The erasers drained them so completely that their bodies just stopped working. And the 6th, Maya asked. Robert Kim, Sarah's brother. He could control metal, bend it into any shape he wanted. The erasers got him 6 weeks ago in Denver. Sarah's face was hard with contained anger. They left him alive too, just like James. My brother doesn't even recognize me now. He sits in a hospital room and plays with toy blocks like a 3-year-old child. Maya sat down heavily on one of the folding chairs. 6 people with incredible abilities, and half of them were gone. The survivors were hiding in an abandoned gas station, living like refugees in their own world. Why are you telling me all this? Maya asked. Elena looked at David, who nodded slightly. Because you're the key to stopping them, Elena said. David's visions all point to the same thing. The erasers are planning something big. In 3 days, they're going to open a permanent gateway between their dying dimension and our world. A permanent gateway, Maya repeated. Think of it as a bridge, Marcus explained. Right now, they can only send small groups of erasers to our dimension for short periods of time. But if they build a permanent bridge, they can bring their entire species across. Billions of them. Sarah's voice was bitter. They'll turn Earth into a feeding ground. They'll drain every human being with any kind of psychic ability. Then they'll drain everyone else just for fun. David's eyes flickered white for a moment. In 72 hours, the gateway opens. In 73 hours, humanity begins to die. Maya looked around at the 5 other people in the room. They were all watching her with expressions of desperate hope. What do you want me to do? Maya asked. Elena leaned forward. David's visions show that your power is different from ours. We can manipulate matter and energy, but you can manipulate the fundamental forces that hold reality together. You can close their gateway, but only if you stop running from what you are. I've been running for 3 years, Maya said quietly. We know, Lin said gently. We've all been running, but running time is over. The erasers know where we are. They know our abilities. They know our weaknesses. The only way to survive is to fight back. Maya thought about James sitting in a white room with an empty mind. She thought about Sarah's brother playing with toy blocks. She thought about the billions of people who would die if the erasers succeeded in opening their gateway. She looked at her hands, still faintly glowing with golden energy. "Okay," Maya said finally. "I'll help. What do we need to do?" Elena smiled for the first time since Maya had met her. "We need to learn how to work as a team. We need to find the gateway before it opens, and we need to be ready to fight the most dangerous enemy humanity has ever faced." David's eyes went white one more time. "The battle begins tomorrow. Some of us will not survive, but if we succeed, we save both our world and theirs." Maya didn't understand what he meant about saving the eraser's world too, but she didn't ask. There would be time for questions later. Right now there was only time to prepare for war. Maya woke up at dawn in the abandoned gas station, her body aching from sleeping on the hard concrete floor. Around her, the other 5 members of their makeshift team were already awake, preparing for what Elena called their crash course in survival. "We have less than 70 hours, Elena said, handing Maya a cup of instant coffee that tasted like dirt but was surprisingly hot. "The erasers will open their gateway at the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland. We need to get there, find a way inside the most secure scientific facility in the world, and stop creatures that exist in multiple dimensions at the same time." Maya sipped her terrible coffee and tried not to think about how impossible that sounded. "How do we even get to Switzerland? None of us have passports under our real names." Marcus grinned and pulled out 6 perfectly forged documents. "I spent 2 years learning to phase through government buildings. Turns out the State Department has surprisingly weak security on their computers." "That's illegal," Lynn said worriedly. "So is letting interdimensional parasites drain the life force from every human on Earth," Sarah replied pragmatically. "I think we can bend a few rules to prevent the end of the world." Elena spread a map on the folding table. "We have a contact in Geneva who can get us close to the facility. But first we need to learn how to work together. Maya, your power is the key to everything, but you've been hiding from it for 3 years. We need to help you remember what you can really do." The training began immediately. Elena took Maya outside behind the gas station, where the desert stretched endlessly in all directions. The morning sun was already hot and Maya could feel sweat starting to gather under her arms. "Show me your telekinesis," Elena said. Maya focused on a rusted oil drum about 20 feet away. She reached out with her mind and lifted it into the air, rotating it slowly in a circle. The drum moved smoothly, completely under her control. "Good," Elena said. "Now try to move it while I attack you." Without warning, Elena threw a bolt of blue lightning at Maya's feet. Maya jumped back, startled, and the oil drum crashed to the ground. "Again," Elena said firmly. They practiced for an hour. Elena would attack with electricity, while Maya tried to maintain control over various objects. At first, Maya lost concentration every time Elena's power came near her. But gradually, she learned to split her attention between offense and defense. Marcus joined them next, teaching Maya how to work with someone who could phase through solid matter. "The trick is coordination," he explained, walking through a cactus like it wasn't there. "You can lift me with your telekinesis even while I'm phased, but you have to maintain contact with both my solid form and my quantum signature." Maya had no idea what a quantum signature was, but she learned through trial and error. Soon she could lift Marcus while he was halfway through a boulder, moving him to safety while he scouted ahead invisibly. Sarah's lesson was different. She showed Maya how plants could be weapons and allies at the same time. "Most people think of plants as static, helpless things," Sarah said, touching a dead mesquite bush. "But they're actually incredibly strong and adaptable." The bush exploded into life under Sarah's touch, growing 10 feet tall in seconds. Its branches twisted into sharp spears, its roots spread out like tripwires, and its thorns grew as long as daggers. "Your telekinesis can accelerate plant growth even faster than my direct touch," Sarah explained. "If you grab hold of the life force inside a seed and give it energy, you can grow a full tree in 30 seconds. Maya tried it, focusing her power on an acorn Sarah had brought from California. The acorn cracked open, sprouted, and grew into a 20-foot oak tree so fast that birds flew out of its branches in surprise. "Incredible," Maya breathed, staring at the tree that hadn't existed a minute ago. Lynn's training was the hardest for Maya to understand. Healing and destruction are 2 sides of the same power. Lynn explained patiently. To fix something, you have to understand exactly how it's broken. To break something, you have to understand exactly how it's supposed to work. Lynn placed her hands on Maya's shoulders, and Maya felt warm energy flowing through her body. But this time, instead of just healing small cuts and bruises, Lynn was showing Maya how to see the fundamental structure of living things. Every cell, every molecule, every atom has a pattern, Lynn said. Your quantum manipulation can read those patterns and change them. You can heal injuries I can't even touch. Maya tried to focus on the cellular level of a wilted flower Sarah had created. She could see the damage in the plant structure, the places where water and nutrients weren't flowing properly. Carefully, gently, she used her power to repair the broken pathways. The flower lifted its head and bloomed with colors more beautiful than anything Maya had ever seen. But it was David's training that changed everything Maya thought. She knew about her abilities. You don't just move objects with your mind, David said, his eyes flickering between normal brown and prophetic white. You rewrite the rules of reality in small, localized areas. Watch. David led Maya to a patch of sand and asked her to lift a handful of it into the air. Maya did so easily, creating a small tornado of swirling sand grains. Now, David said, instead of just moving the sand, try changing what sand is. I don't understand. David's eyes went fully white. In 17 possible futures, you turn the sand into water. In 31 futures, you turn it into metal. In 42 futures, you turn it into light itself. The quantum threads that define matter are just suggestions to someone with your level of power. Maya stared at the spinning sand in disbelief. You want me to change one element into another element? Not change, David corrected, his normal voice returning. Redefine. Tell the universe that for this small handful of matter, the rules are different. It took Maya 3 hours of intense concentration, but finally she managed to transform a few grains of sand into drops of pure water, then into tiny pieces of gold, then into points of light that hung in the air like miniature stars. The eraser's gateway works by tearing holes in the quantum threads that hold space and time together, David explained. But if you can redefine the basic rules of reality, you can weave those threads back together. You can close doorways between dimensions. Maya sat down heavily on a rock, exhausted but amazed by what she had learned. For the first time since the nightmare at the government facility, she was starting to understand the true scope of her abilities. But their training session was interrupted by Lynn's terrified scream. Maya ran back to the gas station to find Lynn on the ground, her eyes glowing with the terrible blue light of the erasers. When she spoke, it was in the hollow voice Maya remembered from the diner. We have found you again, Lynn said, though her mouth moved like a puppet's. We know your plans. We know your destination. The gateway opens in 18 hours, not 72. You are too late to stop us. Elena knelt beside Lynn, trying to break the eraser's mental hold on their healer. Fight it, Lynn, don't let them use you. But Lynn continued speaking in the eraser's voice. The one called Maya Chen will watch her world die. She will watch her friends die. Then she will join us willingly, or we will take her power by force. The possession ended abruptly, leaving Lynn unconscious, but breathing. Elena checked her pulse while the others gathered around in worried silence. They've accelerated their timeline, Marcus said grimly. 18 hours instead of 72. Sarah was already packing their few supplies. We need to leave now. If they can possess Lynn from a distance, nowhere is safe. Elena helped Lynn to her feet as she slowly regained consciousness. What happened? Lynn asked weakly. The erasers used you as a telephone, Elena said. They wanted us to know that we're running out of time. Maya looked around at her new teammates. They had trained for 1 day instead of 3. They had learned the basics of working together, but they weren't ready for the fight of their lives. But ready or not, the battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. David's eyes flickered white one more time. The airplane leaves in 4 hours. Some of us will not return from Switzerland, but the gateway must be stopped no matter the cost. Maya touched the quantum threads she could now see flowing around everything in the world. She thought about James sitting empty-eyed in a white room. She thought about Sarah's brother playing with toy blocks. She thought about 8 billion people who had no idea their world was about to end. Then we stop it, Maya said firmly. Whatever it takes. The war for Earth's survival had begun. The Large Hadron Collider stretched for miles beneath the Swiss countryside, a massive underground tunnel filled with the most advanced scientific equipment on Earth. Maya and her team stood at the entrance to the facility, watching in horror as blue lights flickered through the windows of every building. "They're already here," Elena whispered, electricity crackling between her fingers. "The entire facility has been taken over." Through the chain-link fence, Maya could see scientists and security guards walking in perfect formation. Their eyes glowed with the same blue light she had seen in her diner 3 days ago. Hundreds of people, all controlled by the erasers like puppets on invisible strings. "How do we get inside?" Marcus asked, studying the heavily fortified entrance. "Even if I phase through the walls, I can't get all of us past that many guards." David's eyes flickered white for a moment. "In 12 minutes, they will move most of the possessed workers to the main accelerator chamber. The entrance will be less defended." 12 minutes, Sarah said, touching the ground beneath her feet. "I can work with that." Maya watched as Sarah's power spread through the earth like invisible fire. Grass began growing at impossible speed around the facility. Trees erupted from the concrete parking lot. Vines crawled up the sides of buildings, their leaves growing thick enough to block the security cameras. "Nature's cover," Sarah said with a grim smile. "Now we can move without being seen." When David's predicted time arrived, they slipped through the facility like ghosts. Marcus phased through walls to disable security systems. Elena sent controlled bursts of electricity through the power lines, creating flickering lights that confused the remaining guards. Lynn healed their cuts and bruises from crawling through Sarah's thorny barriers. Maya used her power to bend reality in small ways around them. Security doors opened at her touch. Surveillance cameras turned to look at empty corridors instead of tracking their movement. Metal detectors registered their presence as maintenance equipment instead of intruders. But as they descended deeper into the facility, the atmosphere grew heavier and stranger. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with unnatural energy. The air tasted like copper and electricity. Maya's power responded to the wrongness around them, golden light leaking from her skin despite her efforts to stay hidden. "The main chamber is just ahead," Elena said, checking the facility map they had stolen from a security office. "Whatever they're doing, it's centered there." They reached a massive set of steel doors marked with radiation warnings and biohazard symbols. Through the small windows, Maya could see the heart of the Large Hadron Collider. The particle accelerator itself was a circular tunnel nearly 20 miles around, designed to smash atoms together at incredible speeds. But now the tunnel was filled with crystalline structures that hurt to look at. The crystals pulsed with blue light and seemed to exist in more dimensions than Maya's eyes could process. Between them, space itself was tearing open like fabric being ripped apart. The gateway was already 20 feet wide and growing larger every minute. "Dear God," Lynn whispered. "What are those things coming through?" Maya looked through the widening portal and saw the eraser's home dimension. It was a place of endless gray emptiness, where the remnants of a once great civilization crumbled under a dying red sun. But worse than the desolation were the beings pouring through the gateway. These weren't the well-dressed erasers who had visited Maya's diner. These were the starving masses of their species, twisted by hunger and desperation into something barely recognizable as intelligent life. They moved like insects crawling over each other in their eagerness to reach fresh sources of psychic energy. "Hundreds of them," Marcus said, his face pale. "Maybe thousands." "Millions," David corrected, his eyes white with prophetic vision. "Their entire species is dying. This is their last chance for survival." Maya made her decision. "We go in now before more of them get through." Elena blasted the steel doors with enough electricity to power a small city. The metal melted like butter, and the team charged into the main chamber. The possessed scientists immediately turned toward them with glowing blue eyes. But Maya was ready this time. She reached out with her power and grabbed hold of the quantum threads connecting the erasers to their human puppets. With a mental twist that felt like untying knots made of starlight, she severed those connections. 200 people collapsed to the floor as the blue light left their eyes. They would be unconscious for hours, but they were free. "Maya!" Elena shouted over the sound of reality tearing itself apart. "The crystals. You have to destroy the crystals." Maya turned her attention to the strange crystalline structures around the particle accelerator. Up close, she could see that they were made from solidified psychic energy, probably drained from people like James and Sarah's brother. The sight filled her with rage. She reached out with her telekinesis to crush the nearest crystal, but her power bounced off like she was trying to grab smoke. The crystals existed partially outside normal space, just like the erasers themselves. Physical attacks won't work, the tall eraser said, appearing behind Maya with that same predatory smile she remembered. These focusing crystals are anchored in 17 different dimensions. Even your impressive abilities cannot touch them all at once. Maya spun around to face him, golden energy blazing from her hands. Then I'll find another way. There is no other way, the eraser replied. In 30 minutes our gateway will be large enough for our entire species to cross over. Your world will become our feeding ground and there is nothing you can do to stop it. Elena threw a bolt of lightning at the eraser, but it passed through him harmlessly. Marcus tried to phase tackle him, but couldn't make contact with something that barely existed in their dimension. Sarah commanded her plants to attack, but the vines withered as soon as they touched the creature's unnatural aura. Maya watched her friends' attacks fail and realized that she was the only one who could hurt these beings. But she had been thinking about the problem wrong. She didn't need to destroy the crystals or attack the erasers directly. She needed to fix what they had broken. Maya reached out with her consciousness and touched the quantum threads that held space and time together. Around the gateway, those threads were tangled and torn, allowing the barrier between dimensions to collapse. But David had taught her that she could redefine reality itself on a small scale. What if she could do it on a large scale? Maya began to weave, not moving objects or changing matter from one form to another, but actually repairing the fundamental structure of the universe itself. It was the most delicate work she had ever attempted, like performing surgery on the fabric of existence with tools made of pure thought. The eraser's confident expression began to change as he realized what she was doing. Impossible, he whispered. No single being can manipulate quantum forces on that level. But Maya wasn't alone. As she worked, she felt the presence of her teammates supporting her. Elena fed her raw energy. Marcus helped her reach between dimensions. Sarah provided the steady strength of growing things. Lynn healed the parts of Maya's mind that were burning from the effort. David showed her the paths through possibility that led to success. Together, they began to close the gateway. The crystalline structures around the accelerator began to crack and spark. The portal between dimensions started to shrink. The erasers who had already crossed over screamed as they were pulled back toward their dying world. But the tall eraser wasn't finished fighting. "If we cannot have your world," he snarled, his polite mask finally falling away completely, "then no one will." He raised his hands and began to pour all of his stolen power into the gateway at once. Not to keep it open, but to make it explode outward in all directions. Maya realized with growing horror that he was trying to tear open permanent holes between dozens of different dimensions. It would destroy both worlds and create chaos that would spread across the entire universe. Maya had seconds to choose between saving her world and saving everyone else's. But as she looked at the eraser's desperate face, she suddenly understood what David had meant about saving both worlds. These beings weren't evil. They were just terrified and alone, watching their entire species die while Maya's world had everything they needed to survive. Maybe there was a third option. Instead of closing the gateway completely, Maya began to reshape it. Using every lesson she had learned about quantum manipulation, she transformed the violent tear between worlds into something else entirely. A bridge. A stable connection that would allow the erasers to survive without needing to drain the life from other beings. "What are you doing?" Elena shouted as the gateway began to change color from blue to warm golden light. "Giving them what they really need," Maya replied, pouring everything she had into the most complex piece of reality manipulation she had ever attempted. Hope. Maya poured every ounce of her power into reshaping the gateway between worlds. Golden light erupted from her body like a miniature sun, washing over the entire chamber in waves of pure quantum energy. The twisted crystalline structures began to change, their harsh blue glow softening into something warm and welcoming. But the effort was killing her. Maya could feel her life force burning away like fuel in a fire. Blood ran from her nose and ears as her human body struggled to channel forces meant for gods. Her vision blurred and her knees buckled, but she refused to stop. "Maya!" Lynn shouted, reaching toward her with healing hands. But the golden energy around Maya was too intense. Lynn's fingers were burned just from getting close. The tall eraser stared at Maya in amazement and growing fear. "What are you doing to our gateway?" he demanded. "You're changing it into something else entirely." Maya looked at him through eyes that now blazed with pure starlight. "I'm giving your people what they really need," she said, her voice echoing with cosmic authority. Not stolen power from others, but a chance to build something new. The gateway had grown to 50 feet wide, but instead of the violent tear in reality it had been before, it was now a stable bridge of golden light. Through it, Maya could see the eraser's dying world more clearly. Cities that had once reached toward the stars now lay in ruins. Oceans had dried up into empty basins. The red sun in their sky was flickering, like a candle about to go out, but she could also see the potential for something better. Maya reached across dimensions with her consciousness and touched the quantum threads that held the eraser's world together. Just as she had learned to redefine reality on Earth, she began to repair their dying planet. The flickering sun blazed back to full strength. Dead oceans began to fill with clean water. Ruined cities started rebuilding themselves from the ground up. "Impossible," whispered the tall eraser, but his voice was no longer filled with arrogance. Now it carried wonder and desperate hope. The other erasers who had crossed through the gateway stopped their advance toward Maya's team. They stood frozen in amazement as they watched their homeworld healing itself through the golden bridge. But Maya wasn't finished. Creating a new world for the erasers was only half of what needed to be done. She also had to make sure they would never need to hunt other beings for their power again. Maya reached into the deepest levels of quantum reality and began to write new rules. In the eraser's dimension, psychic energy would no longer be a finite resource that had to be stolen from others. Instead, it would flow naturally from the fabric of space itself, renewable and abundant for anyone who learned to use it peacefully. The effort sent waves of agony through Maya's body. She was rewriting the fundamental laws of an entire universe, something no single being should be able to do. But she wasn't alone. Elena stepped forward, ignoring the dangerous energy crackling around Maya. "Take my power," she said firmly. "Use it to finish what you started." "Elena, no," Maya gasped. "It could kill you. Better to die trying to save both worlds than to live knowing we could have done more," Elena replied. She placed her hands on Maya's shoulders, and blue lightning merged with golden light. Marcus joined them next, phasing partially into Maya's quantum field and adding his dimensional manipulation abilities to her own. "You're not carrying this alone," he said through gritted teeth. Sarah knelt and pressed her palms to the floor, sending the life force of every plant for miles around flowing into Maya's exhausted body. "The Earth itself supports what you're doing," she said as green energy joined the swirling storm of power. Lynn ignored the burns on her hands and grabbed Maya's arm, pouring healing energy into her friend, even as the feedback damage threatened to overwhelm them both. "We heal together or we die together," she said simply. David was the last to join them. His eyes went completely white as he opened his mind to every possible future and fed that infinite knowledge into Maya's reality-shaping abilities. "I can see the path," he said in his prophetic voice. "The way to save everyone. But it requires all of us working as one." Together, the 6 humans created a miracle. The gateway between worlds stabilized completely, becoming a permanent bridge that would never collapse or cause harm to either dimension. The eraser's homeworld bloomed with new life and abundant energy. The crystalline structures that had once focused stolen power dissolved into harmless light. But the most important change was in the erasers themselves. As Maya's power washed over them, the desperate hunger that had driven them to become parasites began to fade. They remembered who they had been before their world started dying. Scientists, artists, philosophers, and dreamers who had built a civilization that had lasted for millions of years. The tall eraser fell to his knees as the stolen human energy was purged from his body. Without the artificial power sustaining him, his true form was revealed. He looked almost human, with kind eyes and gentle features that spoke of wisdom earned through long centuries. "Forgive us," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "We were so afraid of extinction that we became monsters. We forgot that survival without honor is not truly living." Maya collapsed as the golden energy finally faded from her body. She had given everything she had and more, pushing her abilities far beyond what should have been possible for any human. But somehow, she was still alive. Lynn immediately began healing Maya's burned-out nervous system while the others helped her sit up. Around them, the possessed scientists and security guards were waking up, confused but unharmed. The eraser leader approached slowly, his hands empty and his posture respectful. You have saved both our species, he said to Maya. How can we ever repay such a gift? Maya looked through the golden gateway at the Eraser's renewed world. Already she could see their people beginning to explore their restored cities, marveling at the abundance of clean energy that now flowed freely through their dimension. Help us, Maya said quietly. There are others out there, other threats we haven't discovered yet, other worlds that might need protection. We could work together instead of fighting each other. The Eraser nodded solemnly. It would be our honor to stand with you as guardians of the innocent. Elena helped Maya to her feet, a proud smile on her exhausted face. So what do we do now? She asked. Go back into hiding. Maya looked around at her teammates, at the Eraser leader, at the stable gateway that connected two worlds in friendship instead of fear. She thought about James and Sarah's brother, who might be healed now that the stolen energy had been returned to the universe. She thought about the other gifted humans who were still out there, still afraid and alone. No more hiding, Maya said firmly. There are others like us who need help. Others who are scared of their abilities and don't know how to control them. It's time we stopped trying to disappear and started being the teachers they need. Marcus grinned. A school for people with powers. I like that idea. More than a school, Sarah added. A family. A place where being different means being valued instead of feared. David's eyes flickered white one more time. In 93% of possible futures, the academy you create becomes the foundation for a golden age of peace between dimensions. Humanity learns that their greatest strength comes not from hiding their gifts, but from sharing them with others. Maya Chen looked at her hands, no longer afraid of the golden light that danced between her fingers. For 3 years, she had seen her power as a curse to be buried. For one terrifying week, she had seen it as a weapon to be feared. Now finally, she understood what it really was. A gift to be shared with the world. Maya was no longer the woman who wanted to disappear. She was the one who would make sure no gifted person would ever have to hide again. She was the bridge between worlds, the teacher of the lost, the guardian of those who had nowhere else to turn. She was exactly who she was meant to be. As Maya and her team walked out of the facility together, the morning sun painted the Swiss mountains in shades of gold that reminded everyone of the light that had saved 2 worlds. Behind them, through the stable gateway, the Erasers began the long work of rebuilding their civilization on foundations of cooperation instead of conquest. The age of hiding was over. The age of heroes had begun, and Maya Chen, who had once wanted nothing more than to disappear forever, now stood ready to shine her light into every dark corner of the universe where someone needed hope. The quiet life she had built was gone forever. In its place was something infinitely more dangerous and infinitely more beautiful, a destiny she had finally learned to embrace.